Hey everyone, you're listening to the Bold Little Minds MomCast, a podcast where we talk to incredible moms who share their unique journey to motherhood, practical tips, and some of our favorite low prep activities so you can enjoy that hot cup of coffee. I'm your host, Krissy. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm glad you're here with us, so pop in your earbuds and let's have some fun. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Little Minds MomCast. My name is Krissy. I am a stay-at-home mom to 2 young boys, and I am so happy that you're here with us today. We had another really great week of at-home preschool. We did not do as much as we did the week before, but I think that's to be expected, right? Your first week of something new, you're always really excited, and you come off to a strong start, but then after that, it starts to whittle down a little bit. But we did a lot of really enriching activities, and we also had some other mixes to our routine this week. We went to our favorite play space and we had some of our friends over and then we went apple picking. So we had a really nice, well-rounded week of everything. I think that's really important to recognize. Some weeks you're going to have weeks where maybe you don't leave the house very much or at all. And then other weeks, maybe you're out and about and feeling really busy, but there's no right or wrong way. You don't have to feel like you have to force something that isn't necessarily naturally occurring. If you are naturally feeling like you need to get out of the house, then there's probably no need to do it. If you are feeling like you're having a great time going out and about, then there's no reason to stay at home. It's really something that you're not going to do the wrong thing. You're not going to find the wrong mix of activities to really enrich your kids and give them a good, well-rounded background because it's going to happen. There's a long life for them to live, and we don't have to feel like we need to pack in so many experiences to their first 3, 4, 5 years of life. They're going to have these experiences within that time, whether we try to or not. It's going to happen. So just go with the flow, go easy on yourself, mama, because it is tough out there and there's a lot of comparison that happens looking at other people's activities. Thinking about my reel that I posted last week with my Apple activities, people were saying, wow, this was a whole unit. This looks like so amazing. And it was funny because this was such a small portion of our day. The behind the scenes of that is, sure, they did these activities that maybe lasted 10 minutes here or there, but they watched a lot of TV too, because I needed some downtime. And that's the way I'm going to get it these days. Because even the activities that I do with them are super hands on for the most part on my end. I am rarely sitting when I'm with them. I feel like I'm on damage control a lot lately, where I'm trying to keep one kid from climbing or falling off the counter and another kid from dumping everything out or tearing everything off the walls, and when they're in these ultra destructive modes before we get a lot of their energy out. And man, getting their energy channeled takes a lot of work. It is not just like, let's go run around the yard. They also need the climbing. And luckily, we have the rock wall, but wow, they're still trying to get inside. My kids are super food driven. So that's something I really want to work on, is trying to figure out a safe way for them to be able to independently pick out their snacks when they need to. I thought I had it down. I have this little container that's meant for a fridge organizer that I put a ton of snacks in. But now, of course, they want everything but. They have figured out how to open up the refrigerator. My 3.5-year-old pulls over his chair, even though they're like on the floor. They're superhuman strength. I'm telling you. They lift up these heavy, heavy wooden chairs from laying on the ground, bring them over to the kitchen, climb onto them, open up the lock, because I have one of those locks at the very tippy top of the fridge. Open that up and then get into the fridge just to look. They just want to see what's in there. And I get it. I do that too. But it is not safe for a 3.5-year-old to be doing that, especially when the amount of climbing on things that aren't necessarily stools involved. So right now I'm in this phase of do I lean into this and just give them the safe stools? Do I keep trying to hold the boundary? What do I do? Because they're getting in a house by themselves, because I have this gate that my husband put in at the bottom of our stairs, so that way they can't just go in and out on their own or up and down the stairs without supervision until they're, a little more steady on their feet. But they figured out how to rabbit hole their way through the side of the stairs, through the railings, to get onto the stairs to go upstairs. So there is no stopping these kids from getting in the pantry and getting in the fridge and just wreaking havoc. They just want to grocery shop and look at everything, which is fun sometimes, but not all the time, especially when I have one kid that's on the rock wall and another kid that I know is on top of the fridge. So these activities that I've been doing are really out of necessity by trying to help us have these more structured channels of how I can spend my time with them. But also, again, it's just a small, small portion of our day. I don't want you to be watching my Instagram or anybody's Instagram and thinking, oh, I should be doing more with my kids. I should be doing all of these things. Because guess what? If you took video of all of the little activities that you did throughout your day, I bet you could come up with a minute long reel of all of these really rich and exciting things to share with people. My interview this week is with my friend Shay. I'm going to do my introduction right now because we had some technical issues and the beginning is a little choppy. So the introduction that I share with her isn't great. Shay is a mom of four. She is a mom of a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, 3.5-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. She is an entrepreneur and she owns the business Sensory Seeking Kids. Her page is so fun to follow. You've probably seen her pop up on my page because I really enjoy her pieces that she's creating and putting together. It's just such a lovely small business to support. So I hope that you check her out and I hope that you enjoy this episode. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And let's interact on social media. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. Shay, I am so happy to hear your story and share it with the world. So tell me a little bit about your background. Like, who were you before kids? What brought you here with us?
Oh my goodness, before kids, I didn't know if I wanted to be a mom.
Me
Let's start
neither.
there,
Yes. Didn't want
right?
to become a mom. Yep.
It was like, maybe if it happens, great. If not, I was going to be a surgeon. I
Wow.
was going to go to med school. Had big dreams of John Hopkins med school since I was a little kid. I mean, 3 years old. It was, I'm going to be a surgeon. I would tell everybody who would listen. Have my little projects from school still that say, when I grow up, I'm going to be a surgeon.
Oh,
I thought I was going to be elbows deep fixing people.
yeah.
And sometimes life just doesn't go the way you want it and you just kind of have to go with the flow. And that's what I've been doing as a person and as a mom is,
Right.
I started school. Then while in school, I was a preschool teacher full time. So,
Mm.
during the day I would teach and at night I would go to school. And then I had a big move and moved across the country, tried again. Then I got pregnant.
Yeah.
I tried again, COVID happened, and two more babies. So here I am. I think it's safe to say that med school probably just aren't in the cards.
Hey, there's always time to at least to learn new things. So did you
Exactly.
start out in school specifically in like pre-med to prepare for that, or were you going for something
Yes.
else? Yeah.
Yes, no, I was totally the first classes I ever took were, depending on what state you started at, were those general ed underclass requirements to get going. That was started back in Florida. Then when I moved out here, I even got accepted into one of the university's pre-med programs. But unfortunately, my divorce was really tumultuous at that time with a child and being a single mom, no family out here all alone. It scared me that I could potentially lose custody of my daughter within that because you don't always get guaranteed to go to the med school of where you go for your
Right.
graduate. But so it just that's okay. I think I just kind of
Yeah.
leaned into motherhood, if you will, and that's the route I am now.
Yeah, dreams change and life has
Yeah,
a way of taking over and taking the
for
steering
sure.
wheel. So and for everyone that's listening, you're in California now. So you started in
Yeah.
Florida and moved out to
Mhm.
California. Wow,
Yes.
what a
Yes.
big trip that must have been, and you said you don't have I mean, you didn't have any friends at least and no
No.
family out there. Wow.
Right. Right.
And
Yep.
did you move after your daughter was born?
No, so actually I started high school out there in Florida
Okay.
and I just needed a big change. I
Yeah.
just saw everybody around me, just addicted to drugs. Just the paths people are around me were not good. I mean, my graduating class, I've lost so many
Yeah.
friends to drugs and alcohol and violence. So I kind of just took that first opportunity to get out and I needed like a new start, fresh start. I didn't have the best relationship with my family there. So it was really easy for me to just be like, all right, I'm just going to spread my wings and I came out here. I met my oldest daughter's dad, and we ended up having her. And yeah, we just kind of started life from there.
Wow. Yeah, good for you for getting out.
Yeah,
We were growing up at a time that was pretty busy with all kinds of stuff going on, and
yeah,
yeah, to be able to say, "This is not the right situation for me," and move takes a lot of courage. And so kudos to you, like
Thank
amazing.
you.
So now you're in California, you have a little baby girl, you decide to lean into your early ed stuff. Like, how did preschool teaching evolve for you? Was it just a side gig at the time when you were in college?
So it was a full-time thing. I didn't think I was ever going to be a full-time preschool
Yeah.
teacher, but I loved it. It was one of those things that I look back fondly and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it really shaped the mom I am today." And I'm so grateful for those experiences and those classes. And when I had a daughter and I was going to school, there was no time to be a full-time preschool teacher anymore. It was more like, now at this point, all I have time for is a couple hours here and there at a local coffee shop.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was hard. I mean, just to be working and going to school full time and working, and it just, yeah, it was an experience. I mean, I think a lot of moms today really can resonate with that. It's not, we have to do that. We have to work. We have to, better our lives, especially something about having a child is it almost empowers us because we want to teach them, to persevere through whatever hardships we're going through, to continue our education, to better ourselves. And we try to set that example once we become moms.
Right, and we do it in so many ways, and we find somehow within us this energy to do it. I mean, sometimes that energy and that courage is just literally getting up in the morning and putting on clothes, and
Yeah.
sometimes that courage is learning something new online, and maybe you start a small business, or maybe you start volunteering somewhere, or maybe you pick up a new hobby, and, it's just incredible seeing what all these moms are doing with it, so and that's
Yeah.
really come about with you and your parenting, right? So you've worn a lot of hats over the years, right? So you've really been putting this like trying on different things, and I think you've had a bunch of different types of jobs. Were those
Yeah.
all before your kids, during your kids, as you're figuring it out?
A little bit of
Yeah.
both, yeah. For a while there, I was doing management and being an operations manager of a small business out here. And during that, I had my oldest, of course, and then I met my now husband, and he has a daughter that's 2 years younger. And we had this little mini blended, tiny Brady Bunch family, and within that, we were working, living our lives, and then I tried to go back to school again
Yeah.
because I'm a forever student. I love school. I'm the nerdy girl with the highlighters and the pens
Love
and
it.
the notebooks. And then during that, it was just go go go. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, that was it. Like I'll never forget, all of our classes shut down. I now then turned into homeschool mom because my kids, one of them went to one school and they had everything put together within a weekend. The other one, it was just kind of like, we don't know what to do. We don't know. So once COVID happened, there was no school.
Yeah.
And first it was 2 weeks, and then it was a month, and then next
Yeah.
thing we're home 24/7. And within that, my classes were all labs. I mean, I was doing dissections and media classes, and they were all hands-on type of pre-med classes,
Ooh.
and they completely got shut down and canceled. So at that point, I had to kind of lean into like that teacher hat that I had had,
Mhm.
trying to help guide my daughters through their schooling and help them out. Like at this point, I had to drop out of school because there was nothing anybody could do.
Mhm.
And then a couple months later, we found out we were expecting a baby.
Yeah.
And prior to the boys, we had infertility issues. We didn't think we would ever be able to have a baby. We actually had lost a son to anencephaly, and at that point we were like, I as a mom was like, I'm done. I can't take any more losses.
Right.
We lost 9 babies, and I can't do this anymore. So COVID happened, and by the grace of God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, we find out we are expecting. And that just kind of flipped everything upside down again, like in one of the most beautiful, rewarding, amazing, unexpected ways.
That really is beautiful. So you were kinda like, "Go, go, go." You had these girls that were older, a little more self-sufficient, and all this heartache, and then this joy comes along through all the scary times. I mean, I think all of us can relate to what you're saying about COVID in our own way, and just I feel like a baby is the best way to kinda turn that around and
Yeah.
find the
Yeah.
positives in it. Did you decide then when you knew that you were pregnant that you were going to lean into more being a stay-at-home mom and with your, freelancing and small businesses, or was it something that just kind of found its way into your life?
You know, it's really funny because I never had envisioned being a stay-at-home
Yeah.
mom. That was never on my radar. I mean, I was like, maybe I'll have kids, maybe I won't. I want to be a doctor and I want to travel the world. I
Yeah.
love to travel. And so it was always like, you know what? I'll stay at home with my kids until they can talk, and maybe 3.5, 4, to get them into preschool, because coming from being a preschool teacher, that was very, very important to me,
Sure.
that they could talk, because things happen in preschool, things happen in
Mhm.
daycares, and I wanted them to be able to communicate with me what was going on, and not be intimidated or scared or nervous. So I was like, I'll just get them to preschool and get them in, and then back I go. And at this time, I was still working. I still was doing operations management, still, working within that.
Yeah.
And then I started doing more social media, freelance social media. So I tried to take my son to work with me. The owners of the business I was working for were super generous, super caring. They're like, you know what? Go ahead, bring the playpen in, do what you got to do. Like, you got
Yeah.
this. You're a great worker. We trust it. We don't think it's going to be a distraction, until my son just he was babies aren't going to cooperate, but
Right.
I felt like my now 3.5-year old, something was different. I'm like, I can't put this child down for 2 seconds.
Yep.
I can't, like, all he screamed, he cried, like, and this is, when he was a couple months old, like, I felt like I never had a break from him. So then I had to transition to being at home, because
Mhm.
at that point I made the decision of, like, this is becoming more of a disruption to the operations of this
Mhm.
business. And it's not fair to the other workers and the employees and all of our contractors to have to deal with this. So I transitioned to home, which was totally fine. I kind of, switched hats with someone else in the company
Oh,
and took
good.
on the role of being that more social media and kind of managing from afar, if you will.
Mhm.
I'm always still getting phone calls of, like, what do I do in this situation?
Right.
But I took that approach so I could give my son more. It just seemed like he needed more.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, my child has a sensory processing disorder.
Oh.
And when we were getting him evaluated, you know, the lady that had come to our house was like, I cannot believe this. He is probably one of the top 5 in my 25 years of doing this job. He top 5 children that has extreme needs of sensory input. Like, he's
Whoa.
he's what you would call a sensory seeking child.
Yeah.
They need that input, they need that, all these terms that I was like, "Wait, what?" Like,
Right.
proprioceptive what? Equili what? Like, going over more than just 5 senses, like, I was blown
Right.
away, like, "Oh my gosh, this makes sense. It's not me as a mom," because I think in those moments, like, I remember just sitting there crying, like, I can't eat. I can't go to the bathroom. I can't, like, when he was a baby, I would nurse him, and my husband would go to work, and I would still be in the same chair, in the same position
Mm.
when my husband came home from
Yeah.
work 8 hours later. Like, I haven't been able to move from this spot. My legs are asleep. I don't know what I'm doing
Mm.
wrong. Like, every time I move, he'd scream, and it was just mind-blowing. Like,
Yeah. And
at
it's not
that
like
point,
this was your first baby, so you knew this
no.
wasn't typical.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And in my first, she was colicky. She was a very colicky baby. She would scream, and like we'd pass her around. At that point I had a very, very large extended family, and we'd
Mm.
sometimes go to a gathering, where there would be like 20, 30 people, and she would cry and everybody'd be, I got it, I got it, I have a
Oh,
trick, I have a trick,
yep.
and it was, as a young mom, I was really young. I was 23.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my gosh, all these people love my child. They're doing their best. And it's just at that point I knew it wasn't me. Like it was like,
Yeah.
it's just what babies do. And they were so encouraging. Flash forward to this point with my son. I'm like, what is going on? What is wrong? Like, oh my gosh, why can I, like 10 years later, not get this? Like,
Right.
what am I doing wrong? Is it a boy thing? Is it a girl thing? Like,
Sure.
you hear about gender
Yeah.
differences, but after a couple months. So yeah, we've had a lot of a lot of trials and tribulations, and trying to figure
Mhm.
things out and see what works and what doesn't work. And oh my gosh, Krissy, it's just been, yeah, it's
Yeah.
been an adventure.
Yeah, it really has sounds like it has been, and how validating that must have been to hear from somebody, a professional, that their evaluation was that this is atypical, like, you knew from your own experience that this was atypical, but to hear from somebody else, you must have been like, "I knew it, thank you.
Yes,
I feel
exactly. I was
seen."
like, it's not me. I'm not a bad mom. Like, oh my gosh, like it's just my baby. So
Right.
so hearing that, we kind of knew, we know, like our instincts, our guts, like that's what we were built to do. There's still something more we're fighting to find the answers for, but
Mhm.
he was didn't like people. Like he would meet somebody and just decide then and there, like, I'm not talking to them.
Mhm.
I'm not going to interact with them. So having people come to our home for his OT, it
Yeah,
it just didn't happen.
right.
And it would cause so many behavioral problems outside
Mhm.
that we were just like, okay, we need to hold off. We need to stop. We need to stop. So we've kind of had like this alternative route of dealing with his SPD
Yeah.
that hasn't been typical, but now that as he's getting older, we're finding it easier. I
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't know why. We keep him busy. He's in extracurriculars. He loves swim. Same thing. He'd go to swim and he would just decide he didn't like one of the teachers.
Mm.
And it wasn't just me that would notice this, it was the other teachers.
Mhm.
So we figured out real quick, like, we're not going to push him to do something that he doesn't want to do, because it doesn't end well, because it just escalates things further down the line.
One of the
Mhm.
hardest things that I think that I've learned or I'm learning as a mom is I have this vision of who I wanna be, and people say that a lot, and they say, "Oh, but you don't have to be your vision." Well, I know that I could be that vision, and I would be so good at it. Like,
Right.
but that's not the mom that my kid needs, and that's
Exactly.
been one of the hardest things for me is trying to be somebody who doesn't feel right to me or doesn't like doing things that I don't necessarily have innate in me. I'm a very social person. I like going out. I would be at every mom group, every story time at every library in like a 20-minute radius.
Yeah.
And that's just not my kid. He does not want to be going to group situations and
Yeah.
sitting there and
Yep.
doing those. So trying to figure out who he is and what he will thrive in, that is a challenge. So good for you for being so in tune to your kids' needs and leaning into that because I think that's one of the hardest parts of being a mom.
Yes, it's like it's that part of you where it's sacrificial.
Mm,
Being a mom is a tough job, and I don't think even us as moms appreciate that on a day-to-day basis. It's one of the most unselfish jobs. Like you said, you would be at every mom group. Me too.
right.
Absolutely. I would be everywhere. Like I am same. We could talk for hours if you would
Right.
allow me in this podcast. I mean, we could talk about everything, but that's not always the way. And to give up that part of ourselves, that is what makes motherhood, I think, really lonely. And sometimes you have mom friends and you start building this village. We did this actually, where
Mm.
we had a mom friend. We would meet at the park every single day, and it was amazing, except our kids didn't get along.
Yep. Yep.
And that has been one of the most heartbreaking, because it's like, as a mom, you're like, yes, yes, this is making me happy.
Mhm.
This is my outlet. And then you see your kids not getting along with their kids when they did.
Right.
And that's why you even started. And it's this happened with a mom and I, and it's just so heartbreaking. I even think fondly back of like, oh man, like every now and then I'm like, should I call her? Like, should we
Yeah.
try again, or should we just pump the brakes? So yeah, I mean, kudos to you too. It's hard,
Yeah.
especially with two boys, 3 and under. My gosh.
Oh boy, yeah, we are not okay. We are surviving, not necessarily thriving, but I do think on the flip side though that, we it is lonely and we do lose those pieces, but we somehow find these other parts of ourselves, like we dig so far down, we find these other things that bring us joy in other ways. And I think that's sounds true for you with your small business, right? You
Yes.
started a business that sensory seeking kids, I mean, you just used that term to describe part of your life. So tell
Yeah.
me how that came about.
So after my son, we had another baby,
Yep.
and I'm just home all the time,
Yep.
you know? And I'm a very, like I said, social, creative person. Like I need an outlet of sorts. So back when I was a preschool teacher, the sensory center for me was a big deal in my classroom. It was like it took up a huge portion.
Yep.
And I always had like little sensory bottles, sensory mixes. I would go outside and do a little walk around the perimeter of our preschool and grab pine cones and acorns and naturey things, and we would do all sorts of fun stuff.
Mm.
So I wanted to incorporate that with my son. Little did I know that that experience back then, sensory wasn't as a big topic as it is today. And I don't want to call it a hot topic
Yeah.
because that would insinuate that it's somewhat of a fad. It's not. I think we're really, as a society, realizing how much we've come away from nature
Mm.
and those experiences because everything has become so sterile to us. Like, just the way we live our lives. We're not outside barefoot running around in the summer breeze anymore. And so with my son, to learn that he needed input, and it was like touch and movement, and
Yeah.
you know I was like, oh my goodness, like, why am I not doing sensory bends with him? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I mean, we used to do this all the time. So I started making sensory bends, and I mean, if you could hear my son like talk, he would be like, mommy, you gonna make me a sensory bend tonight when I go to sleep? Like
Oh.
that is his phrase. Are you gonna do a sensory bend? So with that, I started making him these bins and trying to teach him. And he's just kind of, he's on the beat of his own drum, walks his own path. But I would notice like his attention span would like, instead of being like all over the place, climbing and scaling the curtains and the bookshelves, he would sit there and actually play in it. And sometimes it would just be the movements, like his hands and the rice and pasta, and then just jumping. And it really came about last fall, this time last year, when we started getting the Halloween stuff. And my I made him a sensory bin with the small parts. It was the first time introducing small parts with him.
Yeah.
And he still to this day calls it his skeleton soup because it had little skeletons, and he every day made soup with the little cauldrons. So we still have the skeleton soup bin under our bed, and we bring it out from time to time. It's lasted
Oh.
almost a year now. And being home with them, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put it together a page about this. There has to be other moms going through this and feeling so alone. And I started the page and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to help educate moms, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized it just started morphing
Yeah.
like rapidly. And I'm like, what if other moms need help and ideas on how to incorporate sensory?
Mm.
And, Krissy, I know you've made your own sensory bins. It's a messy job.
That's a job.
It's, I mean, not every mom has the space and the time
Yeah.
and to let things air out and make stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make bins for moms like that. And then, like, coming into the space, I'm like, oh my gosh, resin's huge. I know how to do that. I did
Yeah.
that for one of my jobs. Like, it wasn't a job, but it was like one of those side tasks I would have to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I know how to do that. So then I started creating the resin pieces, and my son was just in love. At this point, I had bought in so many resin pieces from other creators because, I mean, you get into this whole niche and community on Instagram and you are mind
Yeah.
blowing at the creativity. I mean, I have a couple of people that I've bought from, and I'm like, they're still releasing. I'm like, hey, wait, I'm releasing my Halloween, but wait, I want to buy your Halloween
Right.
too because that is phenomenal. So yeah, it really just morphed into its own thing, and it's still, I feel like it's still evolving.
Yep.
I don't know where it's going to lead or where it's going to go, but it's been an amazing thing that I can do alongside
Yep.
with being home with my kids and also get their, his input. My 3-year-old is very opinionated on things,
Yeah.
and to get their input, and it's just turned into this really fun little thing that's like kind of blowing up. So,
That's
yeah,
so cool. And do your girls love it too?
oh my gosh. So it's funny, like the sensory bends with them, oh yeah, they're in it. I have so many
Yeah.
pictures where they're in there like mixing up soups and stuff. Cause sometimes I don't do all these elaborate real life. We don't do all of these
Oh,
elaborate flat lays or sensory play setups
yeah.
all the time. We do them, but just like I just dump a Ziploc bag of a colored rice, and I'll throw in some sticks from Hobby Lobby and some pine cones from across the street neighbor's house
Yeah.
and watch them create. And then I see my olders come down to go play with them, and it's like they're in it too. It's amazing. Like it doesn't stop. And then with the girls, they when they go in and they see me creating, because I try to create at night,
Yeah.
with the resin, you got to mask up and everything. And my girls will come in and will be like, "Oh, I want this. Can I have this?" And like they're like sneaking off the little resin pumpkins and spoons and
Aw.
making requests of ABCs. So yeah, it's actually becoming like this whole family thing where we're all like at the end of the night, it's like, everybody's in there checking in on, and my husband's standing, and it's something.
That's so cute. I really love that vision, that picture of, like, these older girls playing with these little boys. Because I know when I was a teenage girl, I would have absolutely loved that, having the
Yeah,
little boys to play with. Because you still wanna be a little girl, even
of course.
even when you're not and you don't want to admit it because 'cause you're too cool. But that's a perfect way to do that. So let's talk about your girls and your whole family for a second, right? You've got this big age gap. You've got these 2 generations, and then in your first generation, you've got this mixture. Now, how old were your girls when you first combined your families?
So they were 2 and 4 at this
Okay.
point. So they were yeah, my stepdaughter was really young. I mean, I was changing her diapers, getting her
Yeah.
dressed, playing stepmommy pretty quick, and mine was 4. So they were like little BFFs. Like
Oh.
I have pictures everywhere. The first time that they met, we have this picture up on our shelf actually, and we took them to fly a kite and they were holding hands. So they were like little best friends into princesses. It was Frozen at the time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So we watched it on repeat, and yeah, it was just this crazy little life of kids coming and going because we have them 50-50 custody. So of course they're with their other parents, and while they're not on the same schedule, their days do mostly align up.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
like we have a child Wednesday through Saturday, Wednesday after school to Saturday nights, and then the other child we have Wednesday, Thursday, and then every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So at least 2 Saturdays a month we're all together as a family trying to run around and,
Mm.
make up for lost time of the week
Do
with
all the
where we're not
things.
together.
That's cute. How old were they when you had your older son?
Okay, so if he's 3 and a half
Right?
now and she's 15, so she was
12.
12, they were 12 and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12, that's crazy, 12 and 10, and again, it wasn't that it wasn't planned, but it wasn't
Mhm.
expected either. I think we just kinda gave up and
Mhm.
the universe had its own way with us, and
And were
yeah,
they
so they were
thrilled?
old.
Were they
Oh
excited?
my Oh my gosh, they were after losing our first son, they were just incredibly heartbroken. So
Mhm.
to find out that we're having another, they were over the moon, like, "Oh, I'm gonna hold him first. I'm gonna
Oh.
and we tried to involve them. Again, this is through COVID. So
Yep.
it was really hard during COVID because they couldn't go to any of the doctor's appointments. They weren't allowed.
Mhm.
My husband was barely allowed
Wow.
to attend the appointments with me. So the way that they found out, God bless them, this little place in town,
Mhm.
a little sonography place, they allowed us to come after hours, and they snuck our girls in the back room.
Oh my gosh.
And So when we're gonna find out. I have like the chills
Yeah.
because I still just even reliving this moment. So they waited, we were the last appointment of the day, and they knew our story. We had gone a couple times at that point because my husband and I had high anxiety after
Yeah.
losing a baby. So we bought this package and we would go every couple weeks just to make sure the baby's heart was beating and the baby was, we knew what to look out for.
Sure.
And so we got to know the people there really well. And so they snuck us in, and that's where we did our gender reveal. And,
Oh.
you know, they did the little, all right, in 3, 2, 1, and the lights turned on, blue or pink, and it turned on blue. And, one's crying because, oh my gosh, we're having a baby brother. The other one's crying because I wanted a baby sister. So it was, thinking back, it's like making me emotional, like
Yeah.
just reflecting on the magic of that time when we didn't even think we were going to have a
Yeah.
baby. Like, we didn't think that that was even an opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, I'm getting really
Yeah.
emotional about
What a
this.
gift you got there. That's
Yeah.
a memory that so many people could not have, and how lucky you were to have that. Oh my
For
gosh.
sure, so blessed. So, of course, we had to do that again. So they we talked it over with the girls, like, "Okay, like, we have one," like, and, they were like, "He cries a lot." Oh, we're like, "That's what babies do,"
Yep.
my husband and I are like, "This baby really does cry a lot." But, so we're like, hey, we involved them, like, "Hey,
Yeah.
do you wanna have another brother or sister? You guys have each other. He's gonna need a companion. What do you think?" And they were all for it. Even back in when we back in the day with our first son, we sat down with them. We had like this little family meeting. We're like, okay, but this is what this
Yeah.
means. You guys are gonna have to share a room. Like, is that okay? Like,
Yeah.
we went over everything as best as we could at the time. So, fast forward, we have another baby, and
Yep.
again, one's crying for joy because it's a brother, the other one's crying because it's not a
I
sister.
still want
So
that sister.
you know what? To this day, it's I'm gonna call her out,
Yeah.
the youngest of the two girls. She still to this day is like, "Can you please just have me a little sister? I want a baby sister." And I'm like, "Girl, I'm done.
Right.
Mama is tired." And my oldest is like, "Oh my God, mom, if you have one more," like she's over it.
Yeah, I
So
bet. Yeah, it loses its charm after a little while, huh? No matter how much
right.
you love them.
The funniest part is like the oldest one is right there when the boys are making mud pies in the
Yeah,
backyard. She's the one who started it.
cute.
So yeah, she's it's funny. It's this is a crazy life. I
Yeah,
wouldn't I you know what I when I reflect on thinking I was going to be some hotshot doctor,
yeah,
and then to see now where my life is, I'm like, like I could have never imagined this.
yeah,
Like I never even thought of these things,
yeah,
but it's everything I needed.
yep,
And deep down, as I navigate the trials and tribulations of motherhood, and I feel so alone at times, and then I feel that uncomfortable growth that I experience that nobody talks about those changes. And I'm like, I wouldn't trade this for the world.
yeah,
I wouldn't If I could do it all over again, I'd do it the same way,
yep,
you know?
yep,
I mean, of course, hindsight's 2020, but I would yeah, this is everything my heart needed, especially with the background growing up that I had.
yeah,
I couldn't have pictured a more perfect life.
yeah. I used to have
So,
a sign above my bed, this actually was my wedding vows, that said, "Sometimes the dreams that come true are the dreams you never knew you had."
oh my
And
gosh.
it was
Yeah.
just the perfect thing, and that's been 100% my life too. Like, I never had this dream, and if it somehow is my dream even though I never had it. Like, it's
You like
yeah,
wake up and you're like, yeah, this, you know
yeah,
what? This is nice actually. Maybe, I mean,
yeah.
not the toddler run around
I know,
naked
right?
peeing on the
There
floor, but
yeah, there's moments that you'll live without, but it's still the whole picture is great, so that's
no,
so
this is
beautiful.
part of the dream.
Yeah. So we heard a lot about your girls and your older son. Tell me a little bit about your younger one. What was that like adding another boy to this mix?
Oh my goodness. So, of all our children, he's probably the most neurotypical of our kids,
Okay.
believe it or not, the youngest. He's a character.
Yeah.
So I had a 2 and a 4-year-old girls, right? And
Mhm.
I was like, "You know what? I got this. This is fine, right?"
Yeah.
And then having the boys, I'm like, "Oh my god, I do not have this. What is going on?" The difference, ladies and gentlemen, between girls and boys in the younger years is astounding. Like, no one could have prepared me for the craziness. Like, my youngest is just a mini wrecking ball, and while he may be the most neurotypical of the 4, the most easygoing of the 4, he is mimicking everything the older 3 do, like, down to the attitude. Like,
Yeah.
it's just nuts. And so yeah, like if there are anybody out there that are thinking about blended families, and it's so worth it, but it is hard
Yeah.
because we have right now we are living in the hardest stage for boys. I guess they say until they're about six to eight is where the crazy years, because they
Right.
have so much, testosterone pumping through their body. I think that of a teenager,
Yeah.
but in these teensy little small bodies, so that's why they're crazy.
Yeah.
And then for on the opposite end, my girls have so many hormones raging through their bodies,
Yeah.
and it is like sometimes I'm like, "Dear God, please, like, I just need a break."
Yeah, you are going through it on both ends of the spectrum here right now.
I'm getting it over with now, Chrissy. It's just we'll just get it over with now, and it'll be
Yeah.
smooth sailing, right?
Absolutely, yeah, in just a couple of
Please tell me
years,
that.
you're gonna be like, "What was my stress coming from? I don't even remember." You'll blocked it
I'm
out.
being a stay-at-home mom now.
Meanwhile, let's send this woman a coffee, everybody. She needs something.
We don't sleep.
Right. Oh my gosh, yes.
I know you don't sleep either.
Right, I know. We do our best, right? Embrace the chaos and figure it out. And
Yes.
how do the boys do with the girls?
They're
Yeah,
amazing, it's really sweet to watch. The girls at their other houses are only children,
yeah,
right? And they both at the other household were the first grandchild, the first niece, the first great grandchild. So the girls both experienced those firsts,
yeah,
you know, and then they came together and experienced life with a pre-made sister, if you will.
yeah,
Like, it wasn't an organic
yeah,
thing. And then we have the boys, and they are just in love. Like, it just to see them grow up and to go from, one of my daughters has a really big family and she's used to babies, and the other one she's the only one,
yeah,
like, on all sides of the family. So to see, especially for her, that growth and that mama nurturing that isn't always present, when you're the only one, what do you need that for,
yeah,
and they're just amazing. Like, one of them's always reading, the other one's always making mud pies, or, it's just chaos. Even at a young age, the 1.5-year-old knows how to antagonize the girls. Like,
I
he's a
believe it.
little terrorism
I believe it.
sometimes. And it's, at the end of the day, it's beautiful that, they can get them to sleep. And sometimes their sisters are like, if we're having a rough day, sometimes it's all they need is their sisters,
Yeah.
and those moments are honestly some of the most beautiful that you really take for granted. Like, sometimes it just takes sister coming home, and when they know when they're coming home, they can hear my little phone boop. I'll get like this little
Yeah.
ding from our location,
Okay,
Life
yeah.
360, and they stop what they're doing, they run, and they go run up, and half the time they're naked because they're
Yep.
boys. So you see two little streaking toddlers across the lawn running to their sisters. It's Chrissy, it's really magical. It's amazing.
I bet.
They're just the most amazing sisters to their
I
brothers.
bet it sounds like they must really miss them when they're not with you.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. I mean, and that's one of the hard parts too, I
yeah.
guess, of a blended family, that no one talks about, or you don't have a way of knowing or seeing, is that they are going to miss them.
Yeah.
Like, it took a good while when the boys were little, because one of their favorite things to do is go wake up sissies,
Mhm.
and my girls have loft beds, so they like to climb up and get in bed
Yeah.
and throw their stuffed animals and pillows down. And it took a while, like, where the one-year-old now is just finally, he knows they're not gonna be here,
Mhm.
you know? But it's, heartbreaking when they're like, "Sissy, sissy,"
Oh.
and then calling them their pet names, through the door, and it's like,
Yeah.
"Sorry, they're not here, but you know what? Let's go call them."
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of one of the breaks of having blended families, that
Yeah.
I guess we just miss and we don't talk about.
Yeah, thank you for talking about it. Yeah, that's
Of
really and
course.
it's I mean, it's interesting from somebody who's not a part of it, but I can see that. I can
Yeah.
feel it. I mean, I feel like my kids miss everybody when they leave. So, never
Right?
mind somebody that's a sibling and they have such a close bond with. So that must be tough for you. But what an incredible reunion that must be. I'm sure it's a lot of chaos when it
Oh,
happens and reunites.
it's super chaotic. This life, it is so chaotic. Like it's always switching. Our week on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
every Wednesday, our life flips upside down. I don't want to say flips upside down in a bad way and not a
Sure.
bad connotation at all, but
Yeah.
just our routine completely changes because we have different routines when the girls are here versus when they're not here.
Right.
And, even the way, my husband goes to work, he goes to work at different times when they're here versus when they're here because of transportation
Yeah.
and getting them to and from school. So yeah, yeah, it's chaos, but yeah, it's beautiful life.
Yeah, and I think everybody can relate to what you mean with flips upside down and not in a bad way because I think
Yeah,
anything that's a little bit different, you get into a groove, you get into some sort of routine, and then like I don't know, you go to the grocery store, right? At a different time than you usually do, and that flips everything upside down, and you have to try to figure out your new routine when you get home from that. So, like anything you do with these toddlers and these kids can upset the apple cart if you will, and just,
yeah.
it's a great thing and it's good, but it's still a change and
It's real life.
yeah,
It's life.
that's
Yeah,
life.
we're creatures of habit, and yeah, like you said, going to the grocery store 10 minutes closer to nap time will throw off nap
Yep.
time. So
Yep,
yeah.
and that's a whole other story. So, let's talk about your favorite activities to do with kids. We've already talked about your sensory bins a little bit, and I love how you talked about how they could be super simple, like just throwing in rice and some pine cones, and the
Yeah.
kids are gonna have fun with that. But what else, do you have up your sleeve for when these kids are just needing something else?
So we do a game. It's an I Spy game, if you will. And it's super simple. You don't need anything, right?
Yeah,
This is a big attention getter trick I used to use as being a preschool teacher. Be like, oh my gosh. And of course, the minute you say, oh my gosh, they're like, what? What? I think I just saw a bird.
yeah,
I spy a bird. Do you see a bird? So this is one trick that I do with my kids when they're just dysregulated and we need a moment to ground and connect. It's oh my gosh, did you see that?
yeah,
I spy this. And then from there, like even if they're crying, like they could be full on meltdown mode
yeah.
and something like that just snaps them out of it. I don't know what it is, but they're kids are so nosy. So if you can tap into that nosiness, not every kid, but
Okay.
my children are especially nosy. Like, "Oh my gosh, did you see the neighbor?
Yeah.
They're bringing in their groceries. What did they buy?"
Yeah.
And then it turns into this language storytelling, and we find that we learn the most in those moments about colors and shapes
Oh,
and people, and we start talking and like, "Oh, look at their hair." One of my neighbors, bless him, walked out and he's like, "I don't think he brushed his hair today, Mom. Is he going to work like that?" Like, we're like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe he's on vacation. Like, maybe that's his new haircut." Like,
yep. Oh
so
my
the I Spies, the sensory bends too, always having a bin, just a bin. Push it under your bed where they can't get it,
yeah.
have them ready to go. Like you said, the pine cones, spoons, bowls, what you have in the kitchen,
Yep.
just pots and pans.
Yep.
I recommend coloring the rice so that way they
Yeah.
can differentiate, eating rice as to playing
Oh,
rice
good. Yeah, good suggestion.
because, and it's a mistake that I made
Yeah.
with my son where we eat a lot of rice. So my son thought that he could just go and get the rice. And I'm
Yeah.
like, honey, this is eating rice. And he's like, oh, well, was that other one, my sensory bin? That's playing rice.
Cute.
So differentiating that with children is probably key too. And yeah, just make it simple. Just get stuff around, shop your house.
Yeah.
I highly suggest shop your house. You have things in your junk drawer that you don't even know that'll keep them entertained for an hour,
Yeah.
and sometimes all you got to do is just take a handful, put it in a bowl,
Yeah.
and as long as there's nothing sharp or they're at the
Yeah.
age where they can choke on anything and nothing that's a permanent marker for them to
Right.
decorate your home, it's good to go. they'll explore.
Yeah.
So
They
just
don't
keep it
yeah.
simple.
Exactly. They don't need fancy presentation. I have old cake toppers that I keep upstairs and downstairs, and all the toys that I don't know where they go, they're just like random orphan toys. I'll throw them into this container, and then when every now and then I'll give like my little guy a spoon and he just like plays with them and makes a character soup of all these small
Yeah.
people. So it doesn't have to be anything extra and special. And I love the I Spy game. It's so cool because the oh my gosh, like, can just snap anybody out of a cycle when you're
Yeah,
cycling through emotions. That can
for
be
sure.
the trigger to get you out. I mean, it's heavy in language. And then the science, the observational skills. I do something really
Yes.
similar with my kids. And now my 3.5-year-old saying, "Oh, I've got a good idea." It's just the
Eureka!
cutest thing, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I just love it. So these conversations are modeling a lot of lifelong learning from you. So that's
yes,
really great. So
for sure.
we've got one last piece here of giving some advice. So this is a question from Reddit,
Okay.
and I think both of us are going to give some very real, not sugar coated advice to this. We don't have a happy ending for this poster, but hey, we're going to do our best. So the poster says, my son used to wake up at 6, and now for the past week, he's waking up at 4. And the tag they put on this is for toddlers ages 1 through 3. So I don't know how old this kid is. It says, would you suggest we keep him in the crib and let him cry in hopes that he falls back asleep and learns not to wake up that early? Or just suck it up and wake up at 4 with him?
So, I went through this with my oldest son. You know what? Lean into it. You know, you're going to be tired. That's why we have coffee machines in the next room. Lean into that because it's not forever. My son is probably the worst sleeper that I've ever known for a child. And here we are at 3.5, and we're just barely now starting to sleep through the night, not consistently. Last night I had to wake up and get him shaky water.
Yeah.
It's Motherhood is exhausting. There's nothing we can do about that, but it's also temporary. My son would wake up at 3 in the morning and he was wide awake, not going back to sleep. So lean into it. It's not forever. And it's just a season. And the moment you think you have it down, they're going to switch it up. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, what would you say to that?
Yeah, so with my oldest one, we started very early on to do some modified sleep training because that's what we thought you had to do,
Yeah.
and we
That's
learned
what we're told to do.
exactly, and very quickly into this, we realized that any amount of crying just riled him up. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
there was no he would stop crying after 5 minutes, like, he would stop crying when he threw up or something, and we never let him get there, but that's where I felt like the road that we were on was going to, and we were like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"This
For
is
sure.
not working for us." So,
Yeah.
we stopped that real fast, and we quickly moved from he was in a pack and play. We never had a crib, but we moved to a floor bed. And then with my second one, we had a floor bed from the get go. He was never in a
Right.
crib. He was always in a floor bed. And I would just you kind of gauge like if they're still sleepy, I can go back in and lay with them on this floor
Yeah.
bed. And that's you if you learn safe co-sleeping, no matter what the age is, that's a huge game changer. Figuring
Yes.
out laying with them and maybe you'll both get a little more sleep. And then with my first one, if that didn't work, I would put him in the baby carrier, play some Taylor Swift, and do laps around my kitchen island. And then
Yeah.
eventually he might fall asleep, and then I'd lay down with him. And now that my kids are older and it's safe to do things like nap with them on a couch, when my younger one wakes up, I'll go out in the living room and we'll sleep on the couch together. And that we have like a really big Chase lounge couch. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
gigantic and deep. And just having from even for me, having a change when I can't sleep in atmosphere changes it for me. And sometimes we get a little more sleep then. But yeah, there's days where I'm just up at 4 and
Yeah.
like this is what we're doing. We're hanging out. And some days I'd be like, maybe I should go for a run. Like I'm not doing anything right now. Maybe we should go do
Yeah.
that. And yeah, just leaning into it because you could drive yourself crazy trying
Yes.
to like I remember the maps. Did you do this where you would like have schedules? We're like, okay,
Yes.
he slept at this time, and I need him to stay up till here. So
It was an
wake
app
him
on
then.
your phone too.
Yes, there was the apps on the phone, but then I also like I felt like that "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" meme where he has like the pictures on the
Yeah, in the
wall.
little things. Yeah.
That was me and my sister. We were like, "Okay, how can we figure out when does he have
What are
those?"
his sleep cues?
Right, he's waking up
And
more
there's
and
none. There's no
there's
sleep
no sleep
cues.
cues, and I was losing it. So once I just
Yes.
learned to embrace it and,
Yeah.
like, hopefully I can get him back to sleep, I'll put in my earbuds, listen to a podcast,
Yeah.
and we figured it out. Like
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's so hard because in those moments, you know that person wrote it was probably 3 in the morning. You know they were writing like, "Oh, my kid won't sleep." You
Yeah.
we've all been there. How many Google searches
Yep.
did we do, like, in those wee hours, like, "Why is my kid not going to sleep?" Like,
Yeah.
we all did it. It's you know what? Yeah, just embrace it. It's not forever. We decided to do back-to-back kids.
Yeah.
We figured just get them through it and over and
Mhm.
out of diapers, and I have not slept, Krissy, in 4
Yeah.
years, since my pregnancy. I'm tired. Like, "Do you see these
Right.
bags?" Like,
I know.
thank you, Estee Lauder, but yeah, it's I think I'll sleep probably in another 2 years if I'm
Yep.
lucky, and that's okay. I mean, it's one of those again, being a mom is one of the most unselfish and sacrificial jobs you'll ever have, and I think, you know what? When they're older, we won't regret that, and I think moms just need to do instinctually what's best for them and kinda tune out all the
Yeah.
noise.
And I think that's a really important piece that if you sleep trained your kid and that was the right choice for you for whatever reason,
Yeah,
or you did it and it worked well with your kid, if there was something wrong with it, you would have known.
for sure,
If your
for sure.
kid wasn't if this wasn't a good match for you, your kid, and your family, then you wouldn't
Yeah,
have done it and you would have
exactly.
stopped. But if you continued to do it, then that meant it was a fine match. Like it works
Right,
for a lot of
and no
people.
judgment because
Absolutely.
some kids I mean, I have a girlfriend whose son's been sleeping through the night
Yeah.
since he was 2 months old.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what she did in life to get that, but, maybe in the next life for us, but,
Yeah.
to each their own. I don't judge any mom. I know, and we're just all doing the best we can and the best we know how, and what's best for me is not best for you, and what's
Right.
best for you isn't best for me, so,
Exactly. Yeah, I had
you
friends who
know
cried it out successfully, and I was, texting them like, "This is what's happening," and they were like, "Yeah, that's not what my kid did." Like,
yeah,
this our
my kid cried
experiences are
for
not
5
the
minutes.
same.
Like, my kid's a marathon crier.
Right.
What do you mean 5 minutes? My kid's been crying for 4 hours straight a day
Right.
since he was 2 weeks old.
Right.
What?
Yep. One of the messages here, I think, is you aren't gonna screw it up. You're not gonna
Yeah,
make the wrong choice. You're gonna follow your instincts and do what is working,
yeah,
and your kid's gonna be great. And if what's working for you is waking up at 4 a.m. with them and suffering through, you are not alone because I think that's the hardest thing. It's
yeah,
feeling like you're screwing them up. Is feeling like you're
yeah.
doing something wrong and
Well,
you're the only mom on earth that this is happening to, and that's not the case. There's so many
no,
good moms that are in your position. And
each their
we're
own.
all going to end up with these teenagers that we have to drag out of bed. So,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
get
because one day you're gonna be like, "Why are they sleeping so much?"
there. Right.
I mean, I have that now. I have,
Yeah.
2 that don't sleep, and I have 2 that all they wanna do is sleep, and I'm like, "Can you just give a little bit of you to them and them to you, please?"
Shay, this has been a joy. I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed this time that we've spent. Shay, do you have any last gems you wanna share with us?
Oh my goodness. You know what? Just find the joy in motherhood.
Yeah.
I mean, motherhood is so hard as it is, and we can sit here and beat ourselves up. Did I hug them enough? Did I tell them I love them enough? Do we talk about color shapes and ABCs enough? No, just at the end of the day, those things don't matter. What matters is our those moments of joy, and you got to look for that sometimes, because sometimes, like, last week we had a week of hell with our toddlers. We went back and forth on it, and I'm like, yeah, it was rough, but my son was learning to be assertive.
Yeah.
My son was learning to speak his emotions, and at 1.5 it doesn't come out as eloquently as you or I could talk about it.
Mhm.
But no, my son is thriving. My son is going through all of the stages he's supposed to, and it's a beautiful thing. And I could sit there and be like, oh my gosh, he was a tyrant,
Yeah.
right? Or I could be like, you know what, he's developing perfectly fine.
Yeah.
He's being a child. It's not personal.
Yeah.
So just finding the joy, taking things lightly. I think we're too hard on ourselves as mothers. And I think we just kind of need to take a step back, take a breath, and realize that, what, it's a beautiful life that we have kids and that we're in this journey.
Well, that is fantastic advice that I think we all need.
Thank you.
when we're trying to figure out what's going on in their heads because it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yep. Where can we find you and engage with you?
Oh, well, I am on Instagram, Sensory Seeking Kids. We have Facebook as well. I'm always open. So, hey, if you just want to come by and say, hey, hi, or you want some advice, or, if you have a child with sensory processing disorder or a sensory seeker, you can find me there. Please reach out, DM. I love to chat and meet new people. So, yeah, please come visit.
That's great. Yes, please do. Shay will make you feel like you're her best friend from the get go. So
Thank you.
definitely do that. If you'd like to share your story, please reach out to me. You can email me at boldlittleminds@gmail.com or just shoot me a DM. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, all of the things. Please take a moment to like the episode, rate, and review. A review doesn't have to be anything long, just a quick I liked it. And make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, or multiple would be great. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to sharing another story with you with another inspiring mom on our next episode. We'll see you next time.